What would you do if your husband handed you divorce papers in front of your coworkers, right after you thought you'd gotten away with everything? Can a woman really defend her secret life when the evidence is captured in a single photograph, and suddenly, everyone is watching? This is how my perfect image shattered, one click at a time. I never thought a Victoria's Secret receipt would be my downfall. But there I was, standing in our marble-countered kitchen on a Tuesday morning, watching my husband Cole flip through our joint credit card statement with the methodical precision he'd learned in the military. "New lingerie?" he asked without looking up, his voice carrying that flat tone I'd grown to hate over our 7 years of marriage. "It's called taking care of myself, Cole." I smoothed my pencil skirt and checked my reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator. The emerald green silk blouse I'd chosen hugged my curves perfectly. Grant would definitely notice today. "Some of us don't want to look like we've given up on life." Cole's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. At 37, he still had the build of the army sniper spotter he'd once been, all lean muscle and quiet intensity. But somewhere along the way, that intensity had turned cold, distant. When was the last time he'd really looked at me, really seen me? "You're working late again tonight?" he asked, still studying the statement. "Team project. Big client presentation next week." The lie rolled off my tongue so easily now. "Don't wait up." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, my heels clicking against the hardwood. Behind me, I heard Cole's chair scrape against the floor. "Lysandra." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "What?" "Yoga classes don't usually require cocktail dresses." My blood chilled, but I forced a laugh. "It's called business casual, Cole. Maybe if you'd ever worked in a real office instead of fixing boilers and unclogging toilets, you'd understand." The words hung in the air like a slap. I regretted them immediately, but I was already walking out, my heels echoing in the hallway of our downtown condo building. At Morrison & Associates, the accounting firm where I'd worked for 5 years, I made my way to the break room for coffee. The open plan office buzzed with morning energy, but I only had eyes for one cubicle. Grant Fisher sat at his desk, dark hair perfectly styled, reviewing client files. At 31, he was everything Cole wasn't: ambitious, charming, appreciative. When he looked at me, I felt alive again. "Morning, Lysandra." His smile made my stomach flutter. "Love that color on you." "Thank you." I let my fingers trail along his desk as I passed. "Ready for our late meeting tonight?" "Wouldn't miss it." His eyes lingered on my neckline just long enough to make me blush. The day crawled by. I found excuses to walk past Grant's desk, to lean over his shoulder during discussions, to brush against his arm in the elevator. Each interaction was electric, charged with possibility. At lunch, my sister Ivy called. "Mom says you've been working a lot of late nights," she said without preamble. At 29, Ivy had always been the blunt one in our family. "I'm building my career, unlike some people." I picked at my salad in the firm's small break room. "Right, and this has nothing to do with that junior accountant everyone's talking about." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "What are you talking about?" "Come on, Lysandra. You think people don't notice? The way you dress now, the way you act around him. You're married, for Christ's sake." "My marriage is fine," I snapped. "Cole and I are just going through a rough patch. All couples do." "A rough patch doesn't justify—" I hung up before she could finish. My hands were shaking as I deleted the call from my recent list. Ivy didn't understand. None of them did. They didn't know what it was like to feel invisible in your own home, to watch your husband treat you like a roommate instead of a wife. That evening, I changed into a black wrap dress in the office bathroom, touched up my makeup, and sprayed on the perfume Grant had complimented last week. The building was nearly empty by 7, just a few dedicated souls burning the midnight oil. Grant was waiting in conference room C, the one with frosted glass walls on the 5th floor. He'd dimmed the lights and brought wine. "You look incredible," he whispered, pulling me close. For the next hour, I forgot about Cole's suspicious questions, Ivy's judgment, the growing pile of lies I was building. Grant made me feel desired, important, alive. When he kissed me, I kissed back with 7 years of pent-up frustration. It was past 10 when I finally made it home. Cole was in his study, door closed, but I could see the light underneath. I tiptoed to our bedroom, changed into pajamas and slipped into bed. The next morning, Cole was already gone when I woke up. But something felt different. The wedding photos that usually lined our hallway seemed askew, and I could swear my laptop had been moved. I was being paranoid. Cole was suspicious, yes, but he wasn't smart enough to actually catch me. He fixed buildings for a living. What did he know about surveillance or investigation? At work, Grant sent me a text that made me smile. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." I was deleting the message when I noticed something odd. My phone's location services had been reset to always on for all apps. I must have accidentally changed the settings. That afternoon, a delivery arrived at my desk, a beautiful bouquet of white roses with no card. I felt eyes on me from across the office, whispers following in my wake. But when I looked around, everyone seemed focused on their work. It wasn't until I was driving home that I noticed my car's GPS history had been cleared. All of it, every destination, every route, wiped clean. A chill ran down my spine as I pulled into our building's parking garage. Cole was waiting by the elevator, still in his maintenance uniform, his face unreadable. "How was yoga?" he asked as we rode up to the 15th floor. "Fine." I clutched my purse tighter. "Relaxing." "Good." He studied the floor numbers as they lit up. "By the way, I had lunch with Tom Bradley today. You remember Tom? He works security at your building." My mouth went dry. "Oh?" "Yeah, funny thing. He mentioned seeing you leave around 10:30 last night, in a black dress." Cole's eyes met mine in the elevator's mirrored wall. Must have been some yoga class. The elevator dinged and the doors opened. Cole stepped out first, his movements calm and controlled, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "Cole, I can explain." "No need." He unlocked our apartment door and held it open for me. "I'm sure you had your reasons." That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, while Cole's breathing remained suspiciously steady beside me. Something had shifted. The game had changed, and I wasn't sure I was winning anymore. The anonymous envelope appeared on my desk 3 days later, manila and unmarked, tucked between my morning reports. Inside were parking garage timestamps, dozens of them, dating back 2 months. My car, Grant's car, entering and leaving within minutes of each other. My hands shook as I shoved the papers into my purse. Around me, the office continued its normal rhythm, but I felt exposed, like everyone could see my guilt written across my face. "You okay?" Grant appeared at my cubicle, concern creasing his handsome features. "You look pale." "Someone knows," I whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "About us?" His face went white. "What do you mean?" I pulled him into the supply closet, my heart hammering against my ribs. In the cramped space between boxes of printer paper and toner cartridges, I showed him the timestamps. "Jesus," he breathed, "how is this possible? Who would—" "Cole." The name tasted bitter on my tongue. "He's been watching me." "But how?" "These are from the parking garage security system. You'd need access to—" Grant stopped, his eyes widening. "Wait, doesn't your husband work building maintenance?" The supply closet suddenly felt suffocating. Cole's job gave him access to every building in the downtown district, including mine. His military background, his methodical nature, his sudden interest in our credit card statements. It all clicked into place with terrifying clarity. "We need to be more careful," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "More careful?" Grant stepped back, hitting a shelf of office supplies. "Lysandra, if he has this kind of evidence, maybe we should—" "Should what? End this?" I moved closer, pressing my body against his. Is that what you want? His resolve crumbled as I traced my fingers along his collar. No. God, no. My wife asked me yesterday why I've been working so late. If she starts asking questions, then we'll be smarter. Meet somewhere else. That evening, I arrived home to find Cole in the kitchen, preparing dinner with mechanical precision. He'd made my favorite, chicken masala with roasted vegetables, but the gesture felt ominous rather than romantic. How was work? He asked without looking up from the stove. Busy. The Henderson audit is killing me. I poured myself a large glass of wine. I might need to work this weekend. On Saturday? Now he did look at me, those pale blue eyes that had once made me weak in the knees, now cold as winter sky. That's Noah's baseball game. Our 7-year-old son. In my excitement over Grant, I'd forgotten about the game I'd promised to attend. I'll try to make it work. You'll try. Cole's voice was flat, like you tried to make dinner last Tuesday, or tried to make our anniversary last month. Don't start, Cole. I'm doing my best to balance everything. Are you? He set down his spatula and turned to face me fully. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're balancing everything except your family. The accusation hit too close to home, so I did what I always did. I went on the attack. Maybe if you made an effort to be interesting, I wouldn't need to find fulfillment elsewhere. Elsewhere? His eyebrows rose slightly. Interesting choice of words. Panic fluttered in my chest, but I forced a laugh. At work, Cole. Career fulfillment. Some of us have ambitions beyond fixing broken pipes. He studied me for a long moment, then turned back to the stove. Dinner's ready. We ate in silence, the tension thick enough to cut. Across from me, Cole chewed methodically, his movements controlled and deliberate. It was like dining with a stranger. After dinner, I retreated to our bedroom to call Grant. His phone went straight to voicemail, so I tried his personal cell. Can't talk, he whispered when he finally answered. Lauren's here. Lauren, his wife, the woman whose husband I was stealing, whose marriage I was destroying. I should have felt guilty, but all I felt was jealous irritation. When can you see me? I asked. Tomorrow night, the Marriott downtown, room 412. My pulse quickened. A hotel room meant privacy, intimacy, hours together instead of stolen moments in conference rooms. I'll be there. The next day dragged endlessly. I found myself checking my appearance constantly, touching up my lipstick, adjusting my blouse. Grant and I barely spoke at work, but the anticipation crackled between us like electricity. At 5:30, I gathered my things and headed for the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Cole in the lobby, talking to the security guard. My blood froze, but the elevator was already moving, carrying me away from whatever conversation was happening below. The Marriott was elegant and anonymous, full of business travelers and tourists. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, my heels sinking into plush carpet as I walked down the hallway. Room 412 was at the end, and Grant was waiting. What followed was 2 hours of pure escape. In Grant's arms, I wasn't a neglected wife or overwhelmed mother. I was desired, cherished, alive. We made love with desperate intensity, as if we both knew our time was running out. I love you, Grant whispered against my hair as we lay tangled in hotel sheets. The words should have thrilled me, but instead, they filled me with unexpected anxiety. Love meant complications, decisions, the end of this perfect fantasy bubble we'd created. I know, I whispered back, because I couldn't say the words in return. I arrived home after 11 to find the apartment dark and quiet. Cole's study door was closed, no light visible underneath. I crept to our bedroom, showered quickly, and slipped into bed. But as I lay there in the darkness, I couldn't shake the image of Cole talking to that security guard. What had they discussed? How much did Cole know? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Marriott Hotel, room 412. Check-in 6:47 p.m. Check-out 10:23 p.m. 2 guests. I sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed, my heart pounding like a drum. With trembling fingers, I deleted the message, but the damage was done. Cole knew. Somehow, impossibly, he knew everything. Beside me, Cole's breathing remained steady and even, but I could feel the weight of his awareness pressing down on me like a physical thing. He was awake, he was listening, and he was planning something. The next morning, I woke to find all our wedding photos turned face down on the dresser. Cole was gone, his side of the bed cold, and for the first time since this all began, I was truly afraid. The building felt different that Friday evening, charged with an energy I couldn't quite identify. Most of my coworkers had left by 6, eager to start their weekends, but Grant and I had agreed to meet in conference room C one last time before the weekend. I'd spent the day jumpy and paranoid, jumping at every phone ring, analyzing every glance from my colleagues. The anonymous messages had stopped, but that somehow felt worse than receiving them. It was like waiting for the other shoe to drop. "You're being ridiculous," I told myself as I touched up my makeup in the bathroom mirror. "Cole's suspicious, but he's not some master detective. He fixes boilers for a living." But even as I said it, doubt gnawed at me. The military had trained Cole in surveillance and reconnaissance. What if those skills translated better to civilian life than I'd assumed? Grant was already waiting when I arrived at the conference room, a bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket he'd somehow procured. "What's the occasion?" I asked, letting him pull me into his arms. "Us," he said simply. "I've been thinking about what you said the other night, about being more careful. Maybe it's time to stop hiding." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe it's time to tell our spouses. End the charade." His hands cupped my face tenderly. "I love you, Lysandra. I want to be with you properly, openly." The champagne suddenly tasted sour on my tongue. "Grant, we can't just—" "Why not? You're miserable with Cole. I'm miserable with Lauren. Why should we keep pretending?" Because divorce meant lawyers and custody battles and splitting assets. Because it meant admitting I'd thrown away 7 years of marriage for a man I'd known for 6 months. Because it meant facing the judgment of everyone who'd warned me this was a mistake. "It's complicated," I said instead. "Love doesn't have to be complicated." He kissed me softly, and for a moment, I let myself imagine it. A life with Grant, free from Cole's cold disapproval and silent accusations. We made love on the conference table with desperate passion, champagne forgotten, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For those precious minutes, the rest of the world ceased to exist. It was nearly 11 when we finally disentangled ourselves, breathless and disheveled. Grant was adjusting his tie when we heard it, a soft creak from the hallway, like a footstep on old floorboards. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my blood turning to ice. Grant paused, listening. The building was silent except for the hum of the HVAC system. Probably just the building settling. These old places make noise. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. My phone buzzed with a notification I'd never seen before. "Security badge used. Service corridor. 10:47 p.m. "Grant," I said, my voice barely audible. "Look at this." He frowned at my phone screen. "That's weird. Why would you get notifications about—" The conference room door, which we'd left slightly ajar, suddenly swung open wider. Not much, just a few inches, but enough to make my heart stop. "Hello?" Grant called out, but there was no response. We dressed quickly, our earlier passion replaced by cold fear. As we gathered our things, I noticed something that made my knees weak. A small scuff mark on the door frame, right at boot height, as if someone had pushed it open with their foot. "We need to go," I whispered. "Now." Grant nodded, and we slipped out of the conference room like thieves in the night. The elevator ride to the parking garage felt endless, every floor seeming to take an eternity. When the doors finally opened, I practically ran to my car. "Text me when you get home safe," Grant said, kissing me quickly before heading to his own vehicle. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and paranoia. Every car behind me looked suspicious, every shadow seemed threatening. By the time I reached our building, I was shaking. The apartment was dark when I entered, but something felt wrong. It took me a moment to realize what it was. The wedding photos that had been turned face down were now completely gone, leaving pale rectangles on the walls where they'd hung for years. "Cole," I called softly, but there was no answer. I checked his study. Empty. Our bedroom. Empty. Even Noah's room was vacant, though that made sense since he was spending the weekend with Cole's parents. Cole's overnight bag was missing from the closet, along with several changes of clothes. A note on the kitchen counter, written in his precise handwriting, made my blood run cold. "Lysandra, gone to think. Don't try to contact me. We'll talk when I'm ready. C." I sank into a kitchen chair, the full weight of the situation finally hitting me. Cole knew. Not just suspected. Knew. And now he was gone, probably planning his next move with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. My phone rang, making me jump. Grant's name appeared on the screen. "Thank God," I answered. "Are you home?" "No, that's why I'm calling." His voice was tight with panic. "Lauren's not here, but all her things are gone. There's a note saying she's staying with her sister, that she needs time to think." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. He told her. Who told her what? Cole. He told your wife about us. My voice was barely a whisper. That's how he does it. He doesn't confront us directly. He lets the consequences unfold naturally. Jesus Christ. Grant's breathing was ragged. What do we do now? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with another call. My mother's name appeared on the screen, and with a sinking heart, I realized Cole's strategy was even more comprehensive than I'd imagined. "I have to go," I told Grant. "My mother's calling." Lysandra Marie Vane. My mother's voice was ice cold when I answered. "We need to talk." The use of my full married name told me everything I needed to know. Cole hadn't just told Lauren. He told everyone. "Mom, I can explain." Can you? Can you explain how my daughter became the kind of woman who destroys marriages? Who abandons her child for some office fling?" The words hit like physical blows. "It's not like that. Cole and I have been having problems for years." "So you fixed them by having an affair?" My mother's voice cracked with disappointment. "Your father and I raised you better than this." "Mom, please." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, watching as missed calls and text messages began flooding in. Ivy, my father, Cole's parents, even some of our mutual friends. Cole had activated a nuclear option, and the fallout was just beginning. I poured myself a large glass of wine and sat in the dark living room, surrounded by the pale rectangles where our wedding photos used to hang. Outside, the city continued its restless rhythm, but inside our apartment, everything had stopped. My marriage was over. My family was disgusted with me. My lover's wife had left him, and somewhere out there, Cole was planning his endgame with military precision. I had the terrible feeling that the worst was yet to come. Monday morning arrived like a death sentence. I'd spent the weekend in my apartment, ignoring phone calls and living on wine and takeout, but I couldn't hide forever. Work was my only refuge now, the one place where I still had some semblance of control. That illusion shattered the moment I walked into the office. Conversation stopped as I passed. Eyes followed my every movement. The usual morning bustle felt muted, charged with the electric tension of barely contained gossip. I made it to my desk and tried to focus on my computer screen, but I could feel the weight of dozens of stares. Lysandra. My supervisor, Janet Morrison, appeared at my cubicle with the grim expression of someone about to deliver bad news. "I need to see you in conference room A, now." My mouth went dry. "Is everything okay?" "We'll discuss it privately." The walk to the conference room felt like a funeral march. Through the glass walls, I could see Grant already seated at the oval table, his face pale and drawn. Across from him sat Janet and two people I didn't recognize, a stern woman in a navy suit and a man with a briefcase. "Please sit," Janet said as I entered. "This is Patricia Wells from Human Resources and David Chen, our legal counsel." I sank into a chair, my hands trembling slightly. "What's this about?" Patricia Wells opened a folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "We received a complaint this morning regarding inappropriate workplace conduct, specifically allegations of an intimate relationship between you and Mr. Fisher conducted on company premises during company time." The words hit me like a physical blow. I glanced at Grant, who was staring at his hands, then back at the HR representative. That's ridiculous. Who would make such an accusation?" "The source of the complaint is confidential," David Chen said smoothly. "However, we have reason to believe the allegations have merit. Company policy is very clear about workplace relationships, particularly when they involve the use of company facilities for personal activities." "You can't prove anything," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Patricia Wells smiled coldly and pulled out another document. "Actually, we can. Building Security conducted a preliminary review of keycard access logs at our request. Your cards were used to access Conference Room C 17 times in the past 2 months, always after normal business hours, always within minutes of each other." The room began to spin. "That doesn't prove anything. We were working on projects." "What projects?" Janet leaned forward, her expression disappointed rather than angry. "I've reviewed your assignment logs, Lysandra. There were no authorized projects requiring after-hours collaboration between you and Mr. Fisher." Grant finally looked up, his face ashen. "We can explain." "No," David Chen interrupted. "You can't. Because we also have witness statements from the cleaning crew who reported finding evidence of intimate activity in Conference Room C on multiple occasions." I wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor and never face another human being again. Around the table, their faces were masks of professional disapproval, but I could see the disgust underneath. "What happens now?" I whispered. "You're both suspended immediately, pending a full investigation," Patricia Wells said. "You'll need to surrender your building access cards and any company property. Security will escort you out." "Wait," I stood up so quickly my chair rolled backward. "You can't just—" "Actually, we can." Janet's voice was firm. "Your employment contract includes a morality clause, Lysandra. You violated it in the most egregious way possible." The conference room door opened, and 2 security guards entered. I recognized one of them, Tom Bradley, the man Cole had been talking to in the lobby. His expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "Ma'am, we'll need your badge and any company electronics," he said professionally. With shaking hands, I pulled my access card from its lanyard and placed it on the table. My company laptop and phone followed. Each item felt like another nail in my coffin. "Your personal belongings are being boxed up," the other guard said. "We'll escort you to collect them." The walk back to my desk was the longest of my life. Every person we passed stopped what they were doing to stare. Whispers followed in our wake like a toxic cloud. At my cubicle, a cardboard box waited, hastily packed with my personal items, photos of Noah, a small plant, the coffee mug Cole had given me for my birthday years ago. I was lifting the box when I saw him, the process server, standing by the elevator with a manila envelope in his hand. Our eyes met across the office, and he began walking toward me with purposeful strides. "Lysandra Vane?" he asked loudly enough for half the office to hear. "Yes," I whispered. "You've been served." He handed me the envelope and walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of the office with a box of personal belongings in one hand and divorce papers in the other. The silence was deafening, dozens of people watching, waiting to see how I would react. With what little dignity I had left, I tucked the envelope under my arm and walked toward the elevator. Grant was already there, his own box of belongings clutched to his chest, his career in ruins just like mine. The elevator doors closed on the faces of people I'd worked with for 5 years, people who would now remember me only as the woman who threw away her marriage for a cheap office affair. In the parking garage, Grant and I stood by our cars in stunned silence. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice hollow. I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were divorce papers, custody documents, and a single photograph that made my knees buckle. It was us, in conference room C, disheveled and intimate, captured in devastating clarity. "He was there," I whispered, staring at the image. "Cole was there, watching us." Grant looked at the photo and went completely white. "Oh God. Oh Jesus Christ." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is just the beginning. C." As I stood in that parking garage, holding the evidence of my own destruction, I finally understood what I was up against. Cole hadn't just caught us. He'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. Every move calculated, every consequence anticipated. And this was only the opening shot. The law office of Patterson, Bradley and Associates occupied the top floor of a glass tower downtown, all mahogany furniture and leather-bound books designed to intimidate. I sat in the waiting area, my palms sweating despite the air conditioning, watching the city sprawl below through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Mrs. Vane?" A young paralegal appeared at my side. "Mr. Patterson is ready for you." Robert Patterson was everything my hastily hired attorney wasn't. Expensive suit, confident bearing, the kind of man who'd never lost a case he cared about winning. He gestured to a chair across from his massive desk without looking up from the file he was reviewing. "Your husband has been thorough," he said without preamble, unusually thorough. "What do you mean?" He opened the file and spread its contents across the desk like a dealer laying out cards. Photographs, bank statements, credit card records, GPS logs, building access reports, witness statements, a paper trail of my affair so comprehensive it took my breath away. "He documented everything," Patterson continued. "Every hotel charge you researched but didn't book, every piece of lingerie purchased, every late night at the office. He has security footage, keycard logs, even testimony from the cleaning staff at your building." I stared at the evidence of my own stupidity spread across the mahogany surface. "How is this possible? Cole's not a lawyer or a detective." "No, but he's former military intelligence, and he's been consulting with my colleague David Chen for 3 months. Patterson's smile was razor-sharp. "Your husband began building this case long before you realized you were caught." 3 months? The timeline hit me like a physical blow. "But I only started seeing Grant 4 months ago." "Exactly. Your husband suspected within weeks and began gathering evidence immediately. He's been several steps ahead of you this entire time." The paralegal knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "Sir, the temporary hearing is in 20 minutes. Patterson nodded and began gathering the documents. "Let's go face the music, Mrs. Vane." The courthouse was a monument to justice and intimidation, all marble columns and echoing hallways. In courtroom 3B, Judge Helen Morrison, no relation to my former boss, presided with the weary efficiency of someone who'd seen every variation of human failure. Cole sat at the plaintiff's table with his attorney, looking calm and composed in a navy suit I'd never seen before. He didn't acknowledge my entrance, didn't even glance in my direction. It was as if I'd ceased to exist for him entirely. "Your Honor," Patterson began when called upon, "my client acknowledges that her marriage has encountered difficulties, but she contests the extreme nature of the relief sought by the plaintiff. The request for exclusive possession of the marital home, primary custody of the minor child, and freezing of all joint accounts is punitive and unnecessary." Judge Morrison looked unimpressed. "And yet your client was conducting an extramarital affair using marital assets on her employer's premises during work hours. Is that correct?" "Your Honor, there's no evidence that—" "Actually, there is." Cole's attorney, Michael Torres, stood and approached the bench. Extensive evidence, all legally obtained. What followed was a methodical destruction of my life, presented in neat legal packages. The judge reviewed security footage from my office building, not the intimate moments, but the timestamps proving our presence. She examined credit card statements, showing purchases of lingerie and hotel room research. She read witness statements from cleaning staff, building security, and even Grant's wife, who'd apparently provided a devastating account of her husband's changed behavior. "The evidence is overwhelming," Judge Morrison said finally. Not only did the defendant conduct an extramarital affair, but she did so in a manner that was reckless, public, and damaging to multiple families. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, to explain that Cole's emotional distance had driven me to seek affection elsewhere. But Patterson placed a warning hand on my arm. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the defendant's conduct demonstrates a pattern of poor judgment and disregard for consequences that raises serious questions about her fitness as a primary caregiver." "Your Honor," Patterson tried again, "my client is a devoted mother who abandoned her 7-year-old son multiple nights per week to conduct an affair in her workplace." Judge Morrison's voice was ice cold. "I'm granting the plaintiff's requests in full. Exclusive possession of the marital home, primary physical custody of the minor child, and freezing of all joint accounts pending final resolution." The gavel fell like a gunshot. Around me, the courtroom began to empty, but I sat frozen in my chair, watching my life disappear in real time. "Lysandra." Patterson's voice seemed to come from very far away. "We need to discuss next steps." But I wasn't listening. I was watching Cole gather his papers with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. As he passed my table on his way out, he finally looked at me directly. "You have until Friday to collect your personal belongings," he said quietly. "After that, the locks will be changed." "Cole, please." But he was already walking away, leaving me sitting in an empty courtroom with the wreckage of my marriage scattered around me like broken glass. Outside, Patterson tried to put a positive spin on the disaster. "Temporary orders aren't permanent. We can fight this at trial." "With what?" I asked bitterly. "You saw that evidence. He has everything." "Not everything." Patterson's smile was calculating. "Your husband may be thorough, but he's not perfect. There might be ways to challenge how he obtained some of this information. Privacy violations, illegal surveillance. He had legal access to the building through his job. The judge already established that. Then we'll argue emotional abandonment, constructive desertion, make him the villain who drove you into another man's arms." I stared at this man I was paying $300 an hour to represent me, and realized he was as delusional as I'd been. Cole hadn't left any loose ends. Every piece of evidence was legally obtained, properly documented, and devastating in its clarity. "What about the video?" I asked. Patterson's expression darkened. "What video?" "The one from the conference room. Cole has video of us. Together." "Jesus Christ, Lysandra. Why didn't you tell me about this earlier?" "Because I was hoping he wouldn't use it." Patterson ran his hands through his expensive haircut. "If he has video evidence of the actual affair, not just circumstantial proof, then we're not fighting this at trial. We're negotiating the best settlement we can get." The words hit me like a death sentence. "What kind of settlement?" "The kind where you admit fault, give up any claim to alimony, accept minimal custody, and hope he doesn't release the video publicly." I walked out of that courthouse a different woman than the one who'd entered. The Lysandra who'd thought she was clever enough to have an affair without consequences was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the true cost of her choices. My phone buzzed with a text from Grant. "Lauren filed for divorce. I'm ruined. This is all your fault." I deleted the message without responding. Grant was right, it was my fault, all of it. But blame wouldn't change the fact that Cole had outplayed me at every turn, using my own arrogance and recklessness against me with surgical precision. The war was over, before I'd even realized it had begun. The hotel room was a far cry from the luxury suite Grant and I had shared just weeks earlier. This was a budget chain off the interstate, the kind of place that rented by the week and didn't ask questions about why a 34-year-old woman was living out of a suitcase. I sat on the scratchy comforter, staring at the settlement offer Patterson had messengered over that morning. The terms were brutal but clear. Admit fault in the dissolution of my marriage, accept supervised visitation with Noah every other weekend, waive all claims to spousal support, and pay Cole's legal fees. In exchange, the video evidence would remain sealed and eventually destroyed. My phone rang. Patterson's name appeared on the screen. "Have you reviewed the offer?" he asked without preamble. "I'm looking at it now." I took a sip of wine from a plastic cup. The hotel didn't provide glasses. "This is everything he wanted." "It's everything he was going to get anyway, Lysandra. The only question is whether you want to fight a losing battle in public or accept reality in private." "What about the video? Can't we argue that it was obtained illegally?" Patterson's sigh was audible through the phone. "Your husband had legitimate access to that building through his employment. The conference room you used belongs to your company, not you. There's no reasonable expectation of privacy for what you were doing there." "So that's it? He wins everything?" "He already won everything the moment you decided to have an affair in your workplace. I'm just trying to minimize the damage." After Patterson hung up, I poured more wine and scrolled through my contacts. Most of my friends had stopped returning my calls after the story broke. My parents had made it clear that I was no longer welcome in their home until I came to my senses and begged Cole's forgiveness. Even Ivy had blocked my number after I'd called her drunk one night, demanding she take my side. The only person who'd answered my calls was Grant, and those conversations had devolved into bitter blame sessions that left us both feeling worse. A knock at my door interrupted my spiral of self-pity. Through the peephole, I saw a young woman in a delivery uniform holding an envelope. "Lysandra Vane?" she asked when I opened the door. "Yes." "Delivery from Torres and Associates." I signed for the envelope with shaking hands, knowing it could only be one thing. Inside was a single sheet of legal letterhead with a message that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Vane, the settlement offer expires at 5 p.m. tomorrow. If not accepted, we will proceed to trial, and the video evidence will become part of the public record. Additionally, we will be providing copies to the State Board of Accountancy as part of their professional conduct review. Choose wisely. Michael Torres, attorney for Cole Vane." I sank onto the bed, the letter fluttering to the floor. My CPA license, the one thing I had left, the foundation of any future career, was now on the line. Cole wasn't just destroying my marriage and taking my son. He was making sure I could never rebuild my professional life. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, I found a link to a local news website. The headline made my stomach lurch. "Local accountant suspended after office affair scandal." The article was brief but devastating, quoting unnamed sources at Morrison and Associates about inappropriate workplace conduct and violation of professional ethics. My name was mentioned multiple times, along with Grant's. There was even a quote from someone described as a longtime colleague, saying they weren't surprised by the scandal. The comments section was worse. Dozens of people I'd never met felt qualified to judge my character, my morals, my fitness as a mother. Some comments were merely cruel. Others were vicious enough to make me consider deleting my social media accounts entirely. I was scrolling through the digital assassination of my reputation when my phone rang. Grant's name appeared on the screen. "Did you see the article?" he asked without greeting. "I'm reading it now." "This is insane. How did they get so much information?" "Cole." The name tasted bitter on my tongue. "He's been planning this for months. The article is just another pressure point. Lauren took the kids to her mother's house in Oregon. She won't even let me talk to them on the phone." Grant's voice cracked slightly. I've lost everything, Lysandra. My job, my family, my reputation. All for what? A few months of hotel rooms and conference room quickies? Grant and I had thrown away everything for excitement and validation, not love. I'm going to sign Cole's deal, I told Grant. What choice do I have? The next morning, I accepted the settlement. At Patterson's office, I signed away my marriage, home, and son. It's done. Your divorce will be final in 60 days. Walking into sunshine, Cole's attorney texted, "Video destroyed per agreement, fresh start available." But would there be? The scandal would follow me everywhere. 3 months later, packing for Phoenix, a junior accounting position at half my salary. Noah would stay with Cole. I'd see him one weekend monthly when I could afford the ticket. I saw Cole loading Noah's bike. Our son looked happy, adjusted, unbroken by our failure. Cole approached. "Phoenix is a good choice. Clean slate. Will there ever really be one?" "That depends on what you do with the opportunity." "I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve it." "No, but Noah deserves better going forward." Driving away, I glimpsed them in my rear view, Cole's hand on Noah's shoulder. I'd gambled on fantasy and lost to a man who'd played by the rules. Cole won by being everything I'd claimed he wasn't. Smarter, stronger, more strategic. In Phoenix, I'd start over with hard-earned wisdom, hoping to build something worthy of this undeserved second chance.